Greetings once again. This is Dan Gardner, and on behalf of the Mercado Institute of International Trade, welcome to Module 5 on global purchasing. This is where the rubber really meets the road, where we start to execute upon our strategies, including the sourcing strategy discussed in detail in Module 4. Let's jump right in. We have several objectives for this module. First, we're going to analyze both the strategic and tactical roles of the purchasing function as part of a global supply chain. Second, one of our key themes, present the purchasing discipline as part of an integrated approach to the management of import supply chains, integrating functional areas within an organization and integrating with third-party supply chain partners. We'll bring a new concept to the table. As noted in Bullet 3, introduce the purchase order as the pivot document within the entire inbound supply chain. That's a really good section there. We will emphasize the financial significance of world-class purchasing operations, tie things into the financial performance of an organization on both the balance sheet and income statement. And then we will share tactical expertise that enhances the execution of purchasing activities, things you can actually do in the marketplace to improve your performance. Agenda, it's a big one. First, we'll get into the operational and financial implications of effective purchasing. Second, we'll move to functional responsibilities and activities of the purchasing function. What is purchasing responsible for, and what do they do? That pivot document, as we described it, the purchase order. Purchase order details and structure, what needs to go into a purchase order. Another new concept referred to as the cascade effect of purchase order management, how that PO serves to impact all downstream activities. Third to the last bullet, we'll get into determining product quantities and timing of the purchase order process, how much to buy and when to place purchase orders. Then key performance indicators for purchasing. And finally, a tie back to previous modules, the role of purchasing in sales and operations planning. All right, this is a big one, so let's get right down to it. As we often do, we're going to begin with a definition, in this case, of global purchasing. Purchasing serves as both a strategic and tactical business discipline whose mission it is to unite the buy side and sell side of a global supply chain. Strategically, purchasing seeks to fulfill the inventory needs of an organization in a way that maximizes sales revenue opportunities while optimizing inventory levels. Tactically, purchasing is responsible for executing the end-to-end procurement process from the time a purchase order is placed on a vendor until goods are received and vendor invoices are paid. This is a pretty big paragraph, but it's really reminiscent of everything that we've talked about in previous modules and sections. There's a strategic component. There's a tactical component of purchasing. We have to tie those activities into the financial performance of the organization, specifically fulfilling inventory needs in a way that maximizes sales, but not overspending. So these are all themes that we'll get into great detail on, but they have been discussed previously. Second paragraph. Much of the tactical work carried out by purchasing is a function of the business model of a given company. Again, something we spoke of in great detail. For a manufacturer that uses imported raw materials, purchasing's efforts focus on aligning inbound lead times and quantity requirements with the master production schedule. Quantities and timing. That's a very clear theme for us. Conversely, for an importer of finished goods, purchasing must align timing and quantities with the sales forecast as well as real-time demand signals. Again, these topics should sound familiar because we've talked about them in detail in previous modules. We're going to get into detail specific to purchasing as we move forward. Last paragraph here. In all instances, the success of the purchasing function depends not only on its own activities, but the ability to integrate with other supply chain areas that include inbound logistics, trade compliance, and accounting. We'll see how that works moving forward. Here's a slide that we've seen probably 7 or 8 times in previous modules. It represents the buy side and the sell side of the supply chain. Naturally, because we're talking about purchasing, we're going to focus more on the buy side of the supply chain. But the theme is the integration of import supply chains, the role of global purchasing within that integration process. In the end, and we'll see this repeatedly, purchasing is about converting forecasts and/or demand signals into replenishment signals on our vendors overseas. We've talked about raw materials coming into a manufacturing environment. As we'll see, this module is more focused on finished goods coming in from vendors overseas. But the principles are indeed the same. Quantities and timing. Quantities and timing. Taking demand signals from customers in the form of a forecast or actual demand signals, purchases made online, purchases made in a store, and over time, throughout a year, converting those demand signals into purchase orders, actual orders on overseas suppliers, and how we manage them and get them back up the supply chain out into the sell side. Integration is integral to everything we're going to talk about. Internal integration, sourcing, purchasing, accounting, logistics, etc. But of equal importance, integration with our supply chain, albeit external, partners. Freight forwarders, customs brokers, steamship lines, airlines, customs entities, etc. Let's see how all of that works. We will note in the title of this slide, we're going to start talking about the role of purchasing in achieving key supply chain objectives. And by now, we should really know what those 4 objectives are. We have talked repeatedly about these supply chain objectives. And we never apologize for it, nor ever will we. But now we're talking about our 4 key supply chain objectives within the context of purchasing. Let's summarize. Regardless of business model, manufacturer, wholesaler, omni-channel, all import activities should focus on influencing or directly impacting the following objectives. And honestly, we should be able to repeat these objectives with our eyes closed at this point. First, maximize sales opportunities. We can't sell what we don't have. Purchasing is about procuring the goods that we will ultimately sell. So clearly, purchasing has an impact on maximizing sales opportunities. Second, control landed costs. Purchasing, in the end, is about landed costs, the unit price of the goods, the prorated transportation costs that we discussed in so much detail in our prior module, customs duties, merchandise processing fees, harbor maintenance fees, they all impact landed cost. Purchasing equals landed costs, so a direct impact there. Third, reduce and stabilize cumulative lead times. As we defined many times before, cumulative lead times is the amount of time that transpires from the moment a need is recognized until that need is fulfilled. The ultimate reflection of a need on the buy side of a supply chain is the purchase order. We have to drive down lead times, but of equal importance, stabilize those lead times. And then finally, optimize inventory management, because what are we doing in purchasing? We are acquiring inventory in a way that maximizes sales opportunities without overspending on inventory. Without a doubt, purchasing has a direct impact on all 4 of our objectives. We'll see how in greater detail in just a little while. But the big question for now, and we'll end this first section here, what role does purchasing play in achieving these goals? We will answer that in multifold ways, starting with our next section. See you in a bit.